Well, hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about users, everything inside of the users part of Echo. Here's where we can go in and edit a user, create a user, impersonate a user. We're going to go through all of that. So let's hop in and take a look and see. So once I'm inside of the user's system, user's area, I guess I should say, of admin, then this is where I can see all of the users that I have as a part of this particular instance. Now, this is just a demo, so there's not a ton of user accounts here. Many of you may have a lot more than this, but this will give you the idea of what you need to be doing. So over here on the left, let's start from left to right. We see a name, an alias, role, group, email, etc. So let's go through these. Let's look at this second one. My name is Andre, and so here's this account, Andre Dantzler, and then alias John Smith. So what's happening here? Well, this is a system we have set up so that the end user, what we call your responder, the user that you have using Echo, this is not the seeker, but the responder. The responder, when they're logged in, they have the ability to change their name. And we think this is a good thing, but it's created some challenges for admins where it's like, oh man, who's John Smith? So what we've done is we've kept the name. The name is the name that you created when you created the user account inside of Echo. And the alias, now this is the name that your responder has made their name. So by default, these two are going to be the same. So you'll see below Apple Demo and Bob Smith. These are all the same. But you'll see here, Andre Dantzler, John Smith. That means Andre's logged in and he's changed his name inside of Echo. And that's updated this alias here. Okay, so here we can see they're a manager, and right now group just indicates if are they an admin or are they a user. We're going to expand this in the future, but for now those are the two types of groups, a regular user or an admin. What's their email, and then when have they last had activity, and is their account active or not. So over on this far right side, you'll see these three icons, and I'm going to come back to those in just a minute. But first, I need to show you, well, just how do we create a user account to get things going. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see this new user little area. Just click that, and that's going to bring up a dialog box that lets us create a new user account. Now here, all you have to do is type in their name. It can be a single name or a first and last name. Our preference for you is to create a first and last name. So if we create a new user account, Jennifer Smith, and then at sociallyu.com, we would give that email address, and then we would just type in what we want that password to be for that particular user. And I'll just type that in twice. That's just to make sure that you have typed in the password that you wanted that user account to have. Now, when I'm finished, then all I have to do is down here at the bottom, click this Create User icon button. And when I do that, if you look in the upper left, you're going to see a little gray dialog, Created Jennifer Smith. And that's going to go away after a second. And then we're still on this main screen that has the new user dialog box. And that's on purpose, because we found many times when an admin is creating a new user, they may be creating more than just one at a time, trying to make that easy for you. If that's not, if you're done, you don't always have to move your mouse all the way up to the X. You can just simply move your mouse off of the dialog box, and you can just click anywhere, and that'll take you back to the main screen. So how do we find that user inside this list? Well, we could just randomly look, scroll through, or you could just start typing their name, especially if you spelled it right, and you would and you would see that listed there below, and then I can just kind of backspace to get rid of that. Okay, now once we have an account, what are these icons over here on the right hand side? Well, this first one is a phone icon. This is set up so some Echo users are using the phone system portion of Echo. Not every Echo user uses all the different ways that Echo communicates, but if you're doing phone calls, this is where you can set up your responder's phone number so that Echo has the ability to call their phone directly anytime a seeker is calling in and they're logged in or scheduled to receive those calls. So this is where you would add that phone number. By default, we set it up to call the browser. So when the responder is logged into Echo, this is where they would just receive the call through their computer and just answer it and have the conversation there. But if you want to call their phone number, this is a quick way for you to add. Now, I have to give a clear disclaimer here, which is if you do create a phone number and add that in, make 100% sure that's the correct phone number for that responder, because Echo, depending on other settings that we'll talk about in a different video about phone, will start calling that phone number during their shift or whatever settings you have set up for them. So make sure that's the right phone number. Okay, so what's the next icon? This next icon gives us the ability to edit that user account. And when I log in there, this is where I can see the user's profile photo, if they have happened to add one, their name. I can also see their alias. Remember, the alias is the name that they created when they signed into Echo. I can see their email address, and then I have an edit button here, and this edit button lets me go in and edit their name, their email, and their alias here as well. I can change their password here, and then don't forget that each user, when they try to log into Echo on that main login screen, it does give them the ability to be able to change their password from that screen. It'll send them an email they can click on and change their password. So not required to only be able to change their password here, but as we know, sometimes it's just easier to change the password for your responder. You can do that here. We can see when they joined, we can see when their last login was, and we can see if this user is an admin or not. And then below that, we can see their role. Are they a manager or are they an operator? By default, they're an operator. That's just a regular user. You can also make them a manager, and inside that, you can have additional team members be under that particular user. So to edit that list of team members, I can do that. I can see that listing here of users. I could also just go in and start finding the name of a user based off of, just begin typing their name. I can click on the user, which will kind of bold them and fill them in with this blue, or if I decide I don't want them to be part of it, I can just simply click that again to remove them to get the ultimate list of users. Now, what good is it to be a manager of users? Well, you can do a few things. You can see the active conversations that each of those users underneath you are having when you logged into Echo. You can also receive a daily email report that will let you know for the previous 24 hours how each of your team members did inside of Echo, what their performance was like. So this is super helpful to help delegate in larger team settings. Lastly, if you're a manager, you have this circle around, a red circle around your profile account, your photo, and then that lets other users inside of Echo know that they are a leader, and that is easy to kind of tell your user base, like, hey, if you have a question, contact one of the leaders, and you can change the name of what you want the leaderships to be. But by default, I think it's just called a team lead. Okay, so you can also delete the user by just simply clicking that and choosing yes or no. And then lastly, we can just hit done if we've made any other changes. Not required to do that, it saves automatically. So let's go back to users, and we can do that, we can do that one of two ways. We can come up here in this upper corner, or we can click users/permission. So I'm just going to click this users up in the upper corner here. So lastly, you know what, actually I'm going to do one more thing. Inside of this, let's go ahead and impersonate this user. When I click impersonate, I'm now logged into Echo as if I am that user. It's a little confusing since I picked my own name, impersonating Andre Dantzler, click to return as Andre Dantzler. But here's where we would see that. Here's where we can see their name that they have, that they're going by as John Smith. We can see whatever conversations they're doing and have active and are going on through that. And once you're done with that, you can just click this red bar. It's going to take you right back in to Echo as if you are that user. Now, again, a little weird since I impersonated myself. But so now I'm just going to go back over to users and permissions. Lastly, over here on this far side, you'll see that we have this kind of report status bar kind of icon. And so when I click on that, that's going to take me over into reports for that particular user. Now, in this case, this isn't super exciting because this particular user isn't really doing much. It's kind of this pseudo account. But here we could scroll down and we could see any of the different things that this user has set up. So we can see like recent chats or conversation, recent text, etc. that they've had. All of that information we could see inside this list. So lots of information about that user that'll help you kind of see more about what that user is up to. So that's users, and again, you just get to here by simply going over into the admin and choosing that second option from the top there, users and permissions. I hope this has been super helpful for you, and I think we've covered all the things I can think of inside of user accounts. Have a great day.